through thick and thin, through the destructions of both temples, through all the various other travesties that the Jewish people experienced over thousands of years, of millennia, we are still married to our wife. Our wife is that of the Torah. My name is Rabbi Chaim Hanoka. I am a Shliach of the Rebbe in Pasadena, California. We will be discussing the holidays of Sukkot and Simchat Torah today.
Can you please provide an overview of what Sukkot is?
So the holiday is known as either Sukkot, or in English, it's the holiday of booths, tabernacles. It's got all kinds of names. But it basically commemorates the time when the Jewish people left Egypt. They left the city of Ramses, or Ramses, and they came to Sukkot. It was the name of a place, a geographic spot in the desert. In today's mileage, it was about a 75-mile trip, which normally would have taken somewhere around 3 days travel. Remember, you're traveling with men, women, and kids. The estimation is somewhere around 3 million people, Jews. Not easy to travel with Jews in general. But somehow, miraculously, they made it in 1 day. And God provided for them, essentially, protection from the elements of the desert. They're in the desert. There's scorpions, there's snakes, there's terrible heat, etc. And there's various opinions as to where the idea of a sukkah or Sukkot comes from. But essentially, it's, according to many, it was God enveloping the Jewish people in all directions, north, south, east, west, top and bottom, essentially to give them like a protective coating, if you will, the entire nation, to protect them from the elements, protect them from their enemies, etc. So there's a biblical injunction or a biblical commandment that says that you shall dwell in sukkahs, or these booths, if you will, for 7 days. It's a passage in the Torah itself. Basukot teshu shivat yamim. So in turn, for the last couple thousand years, we've built these sort of like hut-like structures where we are meant to dwell as we would dwell indoors, we dwell in our sukkah. So we eat in the sukkah, we drink in the sukkah. There are those who sleep in the sukkah as well. We study in the sukkah. It's like your house, essentially, to, in a sense, give credence and thanks, ultimately, to the miracle that God performed for the Jewish people when we left Egypt. This is still carried on today. It is a very joyous holiday. It's an all-embracing holiday, and a little more of a mystical element to the sukkah is that essentially it is really one of the only mitzvot that completely encompasses the person who's fulfilling the commandment. Because all you have to do is to walk into the sukkah, and you've now fulfilled the mitzvah. You're in the sukkah. It doesn't take much. Now, we eat, which is not that hard for most of us, and drink, etc. But everybody, in a sense, walks in the same way for all intents and purposes, and no matter how observant or lack of observance a person may be, we all, in a sense, observe it, this particular mitzvah, in the same way.
So the holiday of Sukkot is known as a time of joy. Why is it a time of joy? And how does this theme of joy, manifest itself throughout the holiday?
The concept of joy on Sukkot is actually biblical in nature. It says, "V'samachta b'chagecha," you shall rejoice on your holiday. So Sukkot, or Sukkot in particular, is considered to be like the biblical joyous holiday of the year. It's manifest in many different ways. In biblical times, specifically, it was what was done, as they had something called the Simchat Torah, which was the joy of the water pouring ceremony. So in biblical times, when they brought burnt offerings or peace offerings, etc., they were accompanied by flour offering, wine that was poured like as a libation on the altar. And during Sukkot itself, they added a water libation. The water was drawn from the Shiloach. It was an underground fed spring. And when that water drawing ceremony was performed and the libations, it says that the joy that people experienced was basically unmeasured, to the extent that the Talmud tells us that somebody who never saw the water drawing ceremony in biblical times never experienced true joy. So granted, we don't have a physical temple or an altar to be able to perform this particular mitzvah today, but notwithstanding, the joy, in a sense, still reverberates through all the generations and today as well. And in modern times, we have literally we call the Simchas Pesach Shoeva. We have a dancing music, if it's not the first 2 days of the Yom Tov, the holiday itself. We have bands playing and just literally exuding joy as much as possible. The theme of the holiday, to a large degree, is all about joy. So having come from the more serious element of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays, right? The New Year and the Day of Atonement, where we've asked God for forgiveness, we're contrite, so on and so forth. So now we've, in a sense, gotten to a point where we are confident that God has somehow judged us in a meritorious way, And we're moving on to the next step, which is that of unbounded joy, almost like unbridled joy.
The four species is a big part of the holiday of Sukkot. Can you explain what they are, their meaning, and how they are used during the holiday?
The four species and what they represent. So the four species are the etrog, translated in English literally as a citron, different than a lemon, although it looks somewhat akin to a lemon. The lulav, which is a palm branch. There's the myrtle branch, as well as the willow branch, the arava. And we take all these four species, three of them are bound together, literally the myrtle and the willow are bound to the palm branch itself, and then we take the etrog, join them together, make a blessing on them, and we wave it in all the different directions, in a sense symbolizing that God is everywhere, recognizing the fact that God ultimately encompasses the entire universe in every direction. On a more mystical level, it's explained that every one of these species represents essentially a different type of a Jew. What do I mean? The etrog has a pleasant fragrance, a smell, and a taste. This is representative of a Jew who both studies Torah, is intellectually, attuned to what the Torah has to say, as well as observing the mitzvot, as well as observing commandments. The lulav, which is the palm, only has a taste but no smell. It's a date palm. So this is representative of a Jew who studies Torah, perhaps academically, but doesn't observe. Essentially, he's not fulfilling the commandments. Then you have the hadas, which is the myrtle, which has a smell and no taste, representative of a Jew who perhaps is not that educated, not that knowledgeable, but notwithstanding fulfills commandments as they best know. And lastly, you have the willow, which has neither taste nor smell, representative of a Jew who neither knows Torah, what intellectually is in the Torah, and does not fulfill any of the commandments. Point being is that you take all four species, all different types of Jews, and you unify them. So the message essentially behind the four species, as is really the message of Sukkot, is all about unity. You're unifying all Jews regardless of the level of observance, beliefs, etc. It doesn't matter. You put them all together, we bless it, and in a sense we recognize the greatness of God, the omnipotence of God through this. And the same thing applies in the Sukkah, as I mentioned before. All types of people come into the Sukkah, religious, irreligious, it doesn't matter. You just have to walk in. It's an easy thing to do. We come, we eat, we drink, etc. We dance. It doesn't take any great religious understanding per se to be able to do those things. And as mentioned, the underlying theme here is basically unifying the Jewish people regardless of where they come from, what they believe, Ashkenaz, Sfard, and anything in between.
As a rabbi, what is the most impactful effect Sukkot has on your congregation?
I'm going to go back to the unity theme because in our own congregation, we have a big Sukkot dinner the first night of Sukkot. It's usually sponsored by one or two people, so it's free essentially to the community, and it brings in a fairly large crowd. We build a sukkah that's, I think, about 1,700 square feet, which is a fairly large sukkah. But we're blessed to have the property to be able to do it on. It's a big sukkah, and it can accommodate basically the entire community. And as the biblical commandment is specifically to eat in the sukkah on the first day, at the very least, or the first night, so we invite the community members to come, and everybody thoroughly enjoys it. It sort of gets them into that festive holiday mood, and that carries over throughout the rest of the holiday and eventually leading us into Simchat Torah.
Simchat Torah comes immediately after the holiday of Sukkot. Is there a connection between the two holidays?
So essentially, Simchat Torah / Shmini Atzeret is a holiday unto itself. So in Israel, both Shmini Atzeret, which is the day after Sukkot, and Simchat Torah are within one 24-hour period. Outside of Israel, they're two separate days. But essentially, they're really two different holidays. There's a 7-day of Sukkot, and now they sort of just segue one into the next. From a halachic perspective, it's just from one holiday into the next holiday. But for example, the blessing Shehecheyanu, which is made when something is done anew, okay, is recited on Shmini Atzeret because it is a new holiday. It's not just the 8th day from the holiday of Sukkot. Even though it's called Shmini, which is 8, Atzeret means a gathering, but it's a gathering in a sense post we've sort of accomplished the divine purpose of the holiday of Sukkot, associated with the number of 7. And then we're moving on to a higher level, which is that of 8. It's kind of like above the supernal nature of the natural realm of things, 7 days of the week, etc. According to Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, the number 8 has a greater spiritual significance in which it supersedes that of nature. In a sense, Simchat Torah is sort of that day. We've, in a sense, accomplished a tremendous amount through Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and thus the holiday of Sukkot. And now we're moving on to a different level. We're transcending to a level which we couldn't do prior. So why do we dance with the Torah? Essentially, we act as the Torah's feet. That's what's explained. We are the Torah's feet. When we dance with the Torah in Simchat Torah, the Torah is not open. We don't study the Torah on Simchat Torah specifically. We dance with the Torah. Dancing is not something which differs from one intellectual capacity to another. You dance with your feet. Feet are feet. They're not that complicated. When it comes to people's minds, they have different levels of understanding, comprehension, feeling, etc. Dancing is simple, straight across the board. So what are we doing on Simchat Torah? We're dancing with a closed Torah that's inside its velvet cover and basically bonding together with it. And this is really reminiscent of the Jewish people's marriage to God. There's a verse, we say it in davening, Torah tziva lan Moshe morasha kilat Yaakov. Torah, which was commanded us by Moses, morasha is an inheritance, l'kilat Yaakov, to the congregation of Jacob. But the word morasha, which typically is translated as inheritance, is etymologically connected to the word ma'orasa, which means betrothed. That in reality, we are married to the Torah. So in essence, what are we doing on Simchat Torah? We've gotten to such a great level of appreciation for what the Torah means to us, that through thick and thin, through the destructions of both temples, through all the various other travesties that the Jewish people experienced over thousands of years, of millennia, we are still married to our wife. Our wife is that of the Torah. So in essence, it's akin to the husband and wife dancing joyously, okay, with what matters most to them on the holiday Simchat Torah. And that's us, in a sense, dancing with our Torah, the husband, the wife, etc., celebrating this momentous occasion. But this is, Simchat Torah can touch everybody on their own level, and it does. You just have to allow yourself, open yourself up to it, and then even if not everything else in Torah resonates with you on some academic level, on an essential level, we all come from the same place, we all connect to the same place, and it's basically like it's soul food. And therefore, it's something that we all have to connect to. So I want to highly encourage all of you to find your local synagogue, be it a Chabad house or what have you, and celebrate Sukkot this year, even if you've never done it before. Make it a first. I can promise you, you're going to have a good time. It's well worth it. It's an easy holiday. There's no fasting. There's no profuse prayer. Come and enjoy a Judaism of meaning, a Judaism of happiness, and ultimately just have a great time. Connect to who you are.